we'll move on to our last series now in the Eastern Conference, last series to talk about in this episode. And that, of course, is, drum roll please, the Bruins and the Maple Leafs. I mean, you know that this has to be 7 games, right? It's even up at 1 apiece between the Leafs and the Bruins. Nice win for Toronto in Game 2 after losing 5-1 in Boston at TD Garden in Game number 1. Leafs and the Bruins. Let's get into it before we wrap up.
You know, both teams went into this one banged up already. I was wondering like how much of a factor that's going to play. Like seeing Nylander not start the first game was definitely a shock. But I just think that Toronto is going into this maybe a less strong team than previous years, but more of a playoff team than ever before, if that makes sense. And like I had a feeling that the stars of Toronto were going to finally step up and this season and take over with you know some depth effort here and there, and we saw that in Matthews last night. Although we haven't seen it in Marner, who has been just as absent as William Nylander in this series. I'm hesitant here because I think that this one can go either way. Boston just plays as such a team; they figure it out as a team, whereas Toronto is individual efforts and kind of being a little too run and gun for me so far. But I'm picking Toronto in 6 games. I'm giving them the edge. I think in 6, because if it goes to 7, Boston will win the series. So the Leafs have to win it in 6. They've already won their 1 on the road against Boston. I had a feeling that the Stars meant business this year, and the depth effort of this team can push them over the top.
Yeah, I picked the Maple Leafs in 7 games, but I'm with you, Case. Like, if it goes 7, I'm not super confident in this team squeaking out a win in TD Garden when, you know, the psychotic fans are banging on the glass and giving it to the team on the bench and tweeting about it before the game.
The Toronto Dominion Gardens where they were chanting USA for their captain who's a Canadian.
Yeah. Where they own the Maple Leafs which just, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on. But yeah, I picked the Leafs in 7. You guys know that all season long, I've been kind of down on the build, the makeup of this Leafs team. You know, they're better offensively by the numbers, which I predicted, but they're worse defensively by the numbers, which all of Canada predicted. And it's been an up and down season. But when I look at the numbers, even though they're not as good as previous years, I just still had to go with the Maple Leafs in this one. This Bruins team is not as scary as it used to be. They're still a damn good team, and they are the favorites to win this series. By the Vegas odds and by their position in the standings. But I think for the Leafs, you know, there's only 5 guys on the team who even remember playing in those series back in 2018 and 19. It's a totally different team with you know, guys who don't have those scars from previous series against this team. So I just feel like, you know, it's less of a big deal. It's less of a mental block. Even though for some players like Marner, it does look like the mental block is still there. But I don't know. I look at this team, and Case, I think you're right. They're better built for the playoffs. They play sort of a simplified style, which, you know, that comes from having butchers on the back end who just flip it out high and hard. And then, you know, you let Matthews play with 2 goons up front and do everything and have the puck for the whole game. And that's kind of been working for them. But the reason that I'm a little more confident now, especially after splitting 1-1 in Boston, which by the way is sweet. Like if you go down 2-0 though in Boston, you're probably done for the series. Like that's hard to come back. Yeah. But splitting 1-1, that's great because and to do it in a game where you closed it out in a tight defensive fashion and to have your biggest guy play the best playoff performance he may have ever played in that game, you know, 3 points, gets the GWG, saved a goal, pulled the puck off the goal line, put it into Samsonov's pads, like blocking shots, winning battles, snapping back draws, like literally doing everything, offensively and defensively. To have that, it's encouraging, and to get out of there 1-1 from Boston is great. But the other reason why I'm more confident now about this series is that they haven't had William Nylander, who was your second best player all year long, and arguably for about half the season, maybe your best player. Like people are kind of forgetting already because he had 98 points and he was slowed down the stretch and wasn't able to get to 100. But people are kind of forgetting that it was until about game like 65, 70, where Matthews finally passed Nylander in points. Like Nylander was leading the team in points all year long, and he had an insane season. So not having him is a big blow, and then not having a guy like Marner perform up to his standards is also another big blow. So if things go right and you essentially get two of those guys into the lineup playing like their normal selves, hopefully, I just think the offense of this team is too good for the Bruins defense to handle, which, by the way, even though both of their goalies are really good, their defensive numbers in the regular season, the Bruins, that is, were not very good. They're about middle of the pack. So it's not the same defensive stalwart team that we're talking about here, like the Florida Panthers, who were the other opponent that I was much more worried about. So I'm confident that the Leafs can get this done, but it's not going to be easy, and there's a lot of hockey left to be played.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, like we were talking about with the Battle of Florida, it's one of those series that you look forward to given the history and everything. Case, that's a good point you make about, how ideally you'd like to see the Leafs get this done in 6 games. But I do think it's going to go 7. And I do think that the Maple Leafs win this series. And Chad, you and I were texting a little bit last night. I do like the physical nature of this Leafs team and the makeup of it. It's very more playoff type hockey.
Okay, but here's my problem with what you said. I have 2 problems. You said that you like how this team is built, and you clown me for my take saying that this is my least favorite version of the team. Well, if you look at last year and the additions they made, they were even tougher, arguably, or at least the same level of tough, because you had guys like Nola Chari in the bottom 6 and Sam Lafferty and Luke Shen and guys like that and Ryan O'Reilly, who are all tough, but they were better structured to play team defense. And they didn't give up as much in terms of expected goals every single game. So yes, they may be tougher and they have butchers who simplify the game on the back end this year, but I still don't like the team relative to last year's in terms of just general makeup. Now, do I think that because in my head they're a worse version of the team that they can't win? No, of course not. It's the playoffs. Any team can win. I mean, the New York Islanders could win the Cup this year. The Capitals or the Predators could win the Cup this year. And yeah, it would be shocking, but it wouldn't be unheard of or crazy. 8 seeds do it all the time. Look at Florida last year. So,
yeah,
I think because it's the playoffs, every team has a chance to win. And I think the way that the Maple Leafs are built, as long as their stars are going, they might be able to cover up some of the deficiencies in other areas of their lineup, which I think they for sure do still have. So that's, I wanted to clarify that.
I think the difference here is that the toughness, I think they are tougher this year than they were last year. Definitely more suited to play a defensive style last year. But the difference this year is that the toughness is coming in the form of a top 6. You have Bertuzzi and Domi, where that first line has been the best line both nights for the Leafs.
Yeah.
Bertuzzi, Domi, Matthews is definitely getting the job done. You have the two, like Domi maybe getting a little too carried away at times. I guess Bertuzzi also, but they're physical, they're run and gun, they're smashing in the corners, and then you do have the meatheads on the back end like McCabe just chipping it out, and then it's one quick pass to Matthews and you're in there. So it's, I don't know, I can see it working out. There's a reason why in Tampa Bay guys like Bogosian worked out so well for them. Is you just need strength and defensive defensemen who can chip the puck out to really push a series along.
And I'm here for that argument. The fact that, some of this toughness is coming from guys like Bertuzzi and Domi and guys higher up the lineup who make more of an impact. I'm here for that. But I'm just sick of hearing the narrative that, because they have a guy like Simone Benoit who crushes skulls on the back end, that all of a sudden, that's the reason they're winning games. It's like, no, watch him handle the puck. Like, it's scary. Same with Lyubushkin and Edmondson and other guys and Ryan Reeves. But I get the point where it's like, if it's happening from some of the bigger guys who play more of a role, and then it starts to feel like a team identity rather than just having a couple butchers back there, I get it. It makes a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I'm not pointing any fingers towards Benoit being the reason that they're better. Like McCabe to me is just the perfect playoff defenseman. Just like that's the guy you need back there. Like he's like I keep on saying Radko Gudas. Like that's what you're getting out of him. He hits. He's strong in the corners and he'll get the puck out in whatever way he can. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to happen. Agreed.
I like that about him. And this is only the second year that he's ever played in the playoffs before, which is, so last year there were comments about him maybe being timid or trying to make a pretty play because he was a bit inexperienced. But this year he really settled in all season long, just being a fan favorite, like blocking shots with his face, doing everything. So like, I'm here for it. Trust me. I'm not like, if you listen to the solo episode I did on the Leafs, I'm higher on this team now, obviously, than I was at the start of the season because some things have started to fall into place. They made a few deadline acquisitions. I mean, they probably should have done more, but how it sits right now, like this team is looking pretty good. And I'll come back to it, and I'm trying not to jinx this series here, but this Bruins team is not as formidable as they used to be. And coming into the season, we talked about how they don't have their top two centers. Well, we realized that really kind of didn't matter in the regular season. They were still able to get it done. But when push comes to shove, who do they have to shut down Matthews? Pavel Zacha? Charlie Coyle? Hasn't worked yet. So we'll see what happens for the rest of the series. But I just think the offense of Toronto is probably the best it's ever been, honestly, in the Matthews era. And they're hopefully going to find a way to get it done.
I just think in the terms of hockey voodoo, you should have talked more about how you like the Leafs and less about how bad the Bruins are, because it's going to come back and bite you now.
Well, I just want to get out of this zone where it's like, oh, it's the big bad Bruins and the Leafs, they're such underdogs. And it's like, guys, they're just another team. Like the players on this team don't even have the scars anymore. Like just go out and beat them. Just get it done.
1956.
59.
59. I'm dyslexic.
And you know what's crazy about that stat, Case? They haven't won a playoff series against the Bruins since 1959. The Leafs have 4 cups since then. 4.
Yeah, they just avoided the other one of the other 6 or 5 teams in the league.
Yeah.